We are now being introduced. This is good afternoon, everyone. Sir, can you hear me? Hello, good afternoon. Okay. Okay, so let me share my screen first so that we will be proceeding straight. So once again, I am Mr. Leonel Capulso. I am the CEO and President of Bian Books Publication. As mentioned, I am also the Master Teacher of San Matias National High School, Senior High School here in Pampanga. So thank you once again to the Philippine Institute of the 21st Century Educators Incorporated for this virtual conference for the 21st century. For this afternoon, I am tasked to discuss the predictors of research productivity and its implication in the emerging educational paradigm, otherwise known for us as the next normal. So, for this afternoon, we will be discussing some important concepts and principles of action research and research in general, and its implication to research productivity. We will also try to enumerate certain themes of action research, basic research that we can actually use as we continue to conduct research wherever we are in our classroom or even outside the classroom. We will also be discussing the impact of research and action research to teaching and learning, particularly depending on the modalities we are adopting. And lastly, let's try to explain the predictors of research productivity and its implication to us as teacher researchers. So, a Latin adage once said, atrux melior dulcissima veritas mendaces, or in English, a bitter truth is better than the sweetest lies. In our life, sometimes it's okay to hear some bitter truth than hearing some sweet lies. Diba? Parang ang sakit yata na sabihin sa'yo, ang tamis mong pakinggan, pero yung pala ay isang kasinungalingan. Mas mainam yung medyo masakit, pero totoo. This is also true with our relationship with people in our workplace. That is why I appreciate people who are very honest and very straightforward when it comes to settling disputes or misunderstanding, because that's exactly one of the good ingredient of a good organization. And how is this related to research? I'm handling practical research in senior high school for 3 years now. And I would always ask my students, why are we doing research? What is the importance of doing research? So, research is always conducted in order to answer a particular problem. Now, for all my students in senior high school, this is now our review. We do research in order to answer a particular problem, to solve a particular problem, no? And eventually, sometimes to discover something new. So, and here, we learn to discover the truth. And the truth sometimes may not be pleasing to the ears. Kaya nga, sabi nila kung minsan, masakit man ang katotohanan, pero yung katotohanan lamang yung magpapalaya sa atin. And later on, we will see how is this related and importance particularly to the school administrators, to those who are actually entrusted to take care of the educational system. So before we discuss what is action research, what are its paradigms, and how do we predict research in school and in our workplace, let's try to have a short review of what is research in general. Clark and Clark in 2010 defines research as a careful, systematic, and objective investigation conducted to obtain valid facts, draw conclusions, and establish principles regarding an identifiable problem in some field of knowledge. While I'm discussing this, I want you to think of the problems now you are encountering as you deliver instruction, may it be online, or may it be distance learning, printed, or digital. No? I personally have my concerns. That is why later on we will see the importance of conducting research as to the feedback mechanism. Are the feedback being fed to us are actually realistic? Are they based on facts? And from this, as a researcher, we can create something to remedy whatever is the problem. Okay, so an action research is actually a coined word of action and research. This is first developed by Kurt Lewin in 1944. He is actually, for some, he is attributed as the father of action research. He said that action research is the integration of action or implementing a plan with research, developing understanding of the effectiveness of this implementation. Sa madaling salita, as teachers now, as educators, as leaders, we encounter different problems in the workplace or even in our other partners with our stakeholders. So, as researchers, we try to determine what can we do to solve that problem. And we do that by doing research so that we will be able to provide a much better solution to the problem. Okay? That is why Kurt Lewin once said that no research without action, and there is no action without research. So, research and action are always connected to one another. So, and later on you would see how the Department of Education and even other institution, may it be basic or higher education, would appreciate the importance of research. So for Mills, action research is a systematic inquiry done by teachers and other educational experts to gather information about a particular problem, about a particular phenomenon in order to better the situation. Like educational setting operations, how teachers are teaching, how students are learning. Okay? So, Stephen Corey defines action research as a process by which practitioners, teachers, or other experts of the field attempt to study their problem scientifically. So we don't jump to conclusion right away. Okay? That's why I said in research, truth is very important. We have to determine who is telling the truth. In order for us to provide a good solution to the problem, we should have also a realistic problem to have a good solution to a problem. Because this will guide, correct, and evaluate the decisions and actions that we will make without preempting the legal basis of research. No? That is why research or action research in particular is a cycle. Okay? So you start by planning. By planning, you actually try to identify the problem. Ano ba yung problema? Ano ba yung problema sa estudyante ko? Ano ba yung problema sa mga co-teacher ko? Ano yung problema sa aking head? Anong problema sa aming mga stakeholders? And this problem will actually help the researcher to implement something, to do an intervention. If the researcher finds a problem, or kung minsan siya din yung problema, he can actually remedy by trying to introduce something to better the situation. So this is the acting part. So from planning, you now execute your plan. So you try to trial, to collect data by collecting all this information to whoever your respondents or your participants are. And after collecting data, you try to observe. Yung ginawa mo bang intervention, yung ginawa mo bang plan na na-implement mo, mas naging mabuti ba yung sitwasyon? Does it improve the situation? So then you try to share, you try to report. Okay? That is why later on research is actually, research productivity is measured not only by the research we conducted, but how are we supposed to disseminate and share the information that we had. And of course, reflect. Yung ginawa mo bang intervention na mas napabuti yung sitwasyon o lalong lumala, in that case, that will bring you to the next step. No? Babalik ka dun sa planning stage kapag hindi maganda yung naging resulta. And then you try to plan out what are other alternative in order to better the situation. So there, ano lang yan, cycle lang yan. Actually, action research and even other applied research follow the same scenario. So why do we do research, or why do we do action research? According to Creswell, no? Creswell is one of the renowned author when it comes to research, may it be quantitative or qualitative research. According to Creswell, we do research or action research in order to encourage change in school. For example now, no, from face-to-face modality, we used to teach our student online. We could easily react and coordinate with our students. We could easily assess what are the problem. Now, because of COVID-19, there were some challenges that sometimes there is the difficulty trying to give some feedback mechanism with our students. So that is where it actually breeds misunderstanding. That is why here again communication is very important. It fosters democratic approach to education. As researchers, one of the important contribution that we do are the knowledge and the discoveries that we actually discover in doing research. Okay, so all this discovery that could actually improve the educational system will be our contribution to the world. Empowers individual to project collaboration. By research, we are also connected to other researchers in the field and even in the international arena, no, other field of research. Position teachers and educators as learners who seek to narrow the gap between practice and their vision of education. So bilang mga guro, bilang mga educators, mayroon tayong mga gustong gawin sa klase natin. But because of this limitation, sometimes we are actually challenged. We are actually limited. Now, by doing research, that limitation is being bridged by what we can do. Okay? So personally, for example, now I have a hard time contacting to my students or vice versa. So I can make some mechanism in order to bridge the gap. Okay? So as long as the communication is open, as long as honesty is there. So that's exactly the purpose of doing research. So encourage educators to reflect on their practices. For example, you've been doing a particular practice and you think the performance, the competencies you are expecting are very far from the expectation. So that actually calls you to reflect. So what else I can do as a teacher? Promotes a process of testing new ideas. So there might be new ways of producing output from students. So I was sharing with some experts in the world, no, last night with people from Greece, people from India, people from Saudi Arabia about how do they do educational practices. Like how do they assist students in an online modality? Do they still give quizzes that the quiz that we used to give, 10 quizzes, 20 quizzes, or 20 items? While other schools would only, for example, they're very creative because studies said that pure online or online modality could sometimes be saturating and not sustainable. So teachers are very creative by, for example, asking students to produce a particular output that can present in 1 minute or at least draw or create a video and then just send it to the teacher. So we are actually giving our students a little time to do the expected output, as long as we are not compromising the competency. So we should not be very strict by this time, as long as we are able to deliver to student the quality education we are expected to give. So now, what is action research in the Philippine K-12 education and even in higher education? So the Basic Education Act of 2001, also known as Republic Act 9155, it says that all educational reforms in the central office, in the regional office, down to the schools division office, and even to the school level, should be based from research. That is why all decisions should be based on research. So bago kayo gumawa ng isang judgment about a particular person, we see to it that we are actually having the two sides of the coin, no, without only listening to one side. Okay? Because that will help us give a better opportunity to be fair. Okay? So, DepEd Order 39 Series of 2006, also known as the Basic Research Agenda, would try to identify the possible themes and topics that teachers can do that will cater to the different stakeholders of education. In Region 3, for example, we have Regional Memorandum 57, Series of 2018, that tries to adopt the Basic Education Research Agenda. And actually, it has already been amended because of some enhancement. Having said that, we know therefore that the Basic Education Research Agenda, where all of the research initiative, which is actually has its counterpart with higher education, the Research Agenda for Higher Education, tries to provide guidance to schools or school division offices and even to the school leaders in conducting educational research. How should research be conducted by teachers and eventually as teachers to students? How are we supposed to encourage students to do research based on our experience? So sometimes it's very hard to teach research to students if we ourselves have not conducted research ourselves, no? So utilization of research results to inform the department's planning, policy, and program development. That is why even the K-12 education curriculum is a product of research. No? If you try to go the rationale why we adopted K-12, you would realize that it is a byproduct of research. No? We see how other countries have been adopting K-12 education and then compare it to our old curriculum. That actually brings to the realization that we could actually adapt, okay, the K-12 education. Of course, there were some other sides who would try to question, okay, because there would always be some points for clarification. Now, how are action research, for that matter, respond to the educational stakeholders? DepEd Order 39, Series of 2016, identify 4 important themes. But I think this is not only true to basic education. This is also true to higher education, may it be private or government higher education. So, how do we conduct research, or which research are we supposed to conduct? So, the Basic Education Research Agenda identified 4 themes that is actually tantamount or respond to the 4 stakeholders of education: teaching and learning, child protection, human resource and development, and governance. So, ito yung 4 na tema na pwede nating pagkuhanan ng ating mga gagawing research topics. Actually, in a while, I'll be showing you what are the possible topics before we proceed to how do we produce research. Okay? So, aside from the 4 themes, there are also 3 cross-cutting themes like gender and development, disaster risk reduction management, and inclusive education. So sa madaling salita, there are 7 themes that a teacher researcher could adopt in conducting research inside and outside the classroom. Okay, so these 4 themes actually, as mentioned, for example, the teaching and learning process responds to the students and teachers' needs. So dito mo gagawin yung mga research na may kinalaman sa pangangailangan ng estudyante at ng guro. On child protection policy, these research topics respond to the needs of the students alone. On human resource and development, responds to the needs of teaching and non-teaching staff. Governance, however, focus on administration and stakeholder engagement. Under teaching and learning, a researcher could look into 5 sub-themes in teaching and learning. Like instruction, you can make a research on instruction. On like now, you could look into the modality, or which is the more effective modality. What are the challenges encountered in this modality? Curriculum. We now are adapting the MELC, no? The modified competencies of students. We can look into that, the kind of learners that we have, what are the problems encountered by learners, how do we assess students' competencies and learning outcomes. Okay? Now, because we only have 1 hour, on your screen, you could see what are the possible topics under theme number 1. So, roughly, you could have research on student achievement, competencies, values, behaviors, career pathing, personality traits, flexible learning options, school-home linkages, lalong-lalo na ngayong kailangan natin ng more collaboration with other stakeholders, no, may it be in school or the community. Under theme number 2, child protection, studies can be conducted in the area of prevalence, child protection, teenage pregnancy, bullying, drugs, child labor, and gambling. So, kung napansin niyo siguro sa mga nakaraang report sa television, no, yung particularly that school who actually had an online class, no, bigla na lang may naghubad na mga kasama dun sa group, and then they realize they are not basically part of the school, no. So how can we prevent, how can we protect our students from possible data violations? That is why, as we use also online platforms, we also see to it that the rights of our students are also protected. And also bullying, no? In our online mechanism, bullying is now more on cyberbullying. So we can also look into that. On human resource and development, there are 3 sub-themes. You can look into teaching and non-teaching qualification and hiring. If you try to open Facebook now, there were a lot of questions about what will happen if you have passed already RQA, what will be the next step, what will be the online mechanism and everything. Career development, what will happen to teachers? There was a moratorium on teachers who want to be promoted from teacher 3 to master teacher, so on and so forth. The department already have issued a moratorium for that, if I'm not mistaken, and other concerns. Employees' welfare, for example, as much as we try to protect the welfare of the students, are the welfare of teachers also protected? For example, teachers sometimes, because of need, are required to go to school. Halimbawa, biglang nagka-COVID si teacher sa hindi niya sinasadya. Sasagutin ba ng school yung mga gagastusin ng teacher? My wife is an occupational health physician. She actually helps employees to see to it that they are healthy and they are fit to work. And sometimes, she would be the one, or more often, she will be the one to tell the administration if this particular worker or employee is fit to work. That is why one time in one of our conversations, she asked me, kayong mga guro, kapag nagkasakit kayo, ano yung sagot ng eskwelahan? Ano yung sagot ng departamento? I cannot comment much because all the most that I know of is the medical examination that we have at the beginning or towards summertime. But in between that, I don't know that the school is providing us like what the private schools or private organizations are giving. Although we have PhilHealth and other things, but that's beyond the DepEd or the school's help to us. No, that's because we are paying to PhilHealth. But just the same, these are that is why the schools, no, school leaders would see to it that when teachers are going to school, health protocols are properly observed to be free from these possible consequences. So under human resource and development is teaching and non-teaching, qualification and hiring, career development, employees welfare, gender and development. So dito na papasok yung gender and development. So halimbawa sa career development, mapapansin nyo na studies, no, as a researcher, we know that online teaching is saturating. It's not sustainable. Kung minsan nakaka-drain, okay? That is why the school have their own mechanism in order to sustain the health of their students, of the teachers. So, and other mental health issues for that matter. Under governance, which are normally fit for the principals, for the head teachers, And for other non-teaching personnel, they can conduct research on the area of planning, on finance, program management, transparency and accountability, customer satisfaction, disaster risk reduction management. Dito papasok. So ngayon na nasa signal number 3 yung Pampanga, gamit na gamit natin yung DRR. That is why the School Division Office, DRR ng Pampanga, in collaboration with other agency, are having their radar to see to it that schools are properly monitored and also to see to it that employees are secured. Okay, now having said that, let's proceed to the second part of our discussion, which is research productivity. Why do we need to produce research? In higher education, there are three important, I normally call it the trident of education, that is instruction, research, and community extension. And research is one of the important elements of a particular institution if an institution wants to have, for example, a university status, an autonomous status. But in basic education, we know that research productivity is important because according to what we have mentioned earlier, the particular Republic Act and the DepEd Order says that all reforms that will be conducted by the school should be a byproduct of research, should be based on research. So all decisions should be research-based. That's exactly why when a particular school adopted a particular modality, it's supposed to be based from research. For example, my school in San Matias, majority of our modality is printed module. So malinaw yun, printed module. Students will try to give, the school will provide them the modules, the printed modules, and then they will return. Although out of the generosity of the school and the teachers, there are other mechanisms for the feedback mechanism. So students could ask the teacher or the school or through their advisor about certain clarification. And then the advisor would actually tell the teacher concerned about this concern. So that there would be proper channeling of information so that the issue can be properly addressed to. Okay? Because if the proper channeling is not observed, I think there will be some breach of communication. And there might be also possible problems eventually in the organization. So what is research productivity? A simple definition by Abramo and Angelo, research productivity pertains to the number of publications per researcher. And other definitions sometimes not only refer to the number of research produced, but sometimes the number of research being disseminated. Okay, in the study that I conducted, the research productivity were actually gauged on different categories. For example, research being submitted and but not yet approved. Research which is approved but not yet implemented. Or a full-blown research, that is the research which were actually implemented and accepted by the division. It's only then you have a full-blown research productivity. Now, why do we need research productivity? But to understand research productivity, you have first to understand what is culture or what is the importance of research culture. You cannot have a research productive organization if you don't have a good research culture. Okay? Teresa Marchant of Hanover Research in 2014 defines a culture as a system of widely shared and strongly held values. Ito yung mga pinanghahawakang mga pagpapahalaga ng isang organisasyon. So these are your values. Apply that to research. Research culture pertains to the structure that gives research behavior significance and allows to understand and evaluate research activity. Kanina, sabi natin, all innovations in school supposed to be based from and on research. Therefore, kapag ako ay school leader, lahat ng mga desisyon na gagawin ko, especially when it comes to innovation and reform, should be based from research, from studies. So, but to do that, you should have a good research culture. Okay? Kapag ang isang leader ng eskwelahan o ng institusyon ay mayroong malawak na kultura ng research, alam niya na lahat ng gagawin niya ay nakabatay sa research. No? So, that's according to Cheetham of the University of Western Sydney. A culture of research provides a supportive context in which research is uniformly expected, discussed, produced, and valued. So pag sinabi mong mayroon kaming magandang research culture, ibig sabihin sa inyong eskwelahan, research is actually expected by all, from teacher, master teacher, head teacher, principal, up to the higher up. It is being discussed in your LAC session, in your meetings, produced and valued. Tanong, in your school, all the reforms conducted by your leader, how many percent of them were actually based from research? Or regardless of who conducted the research. If most of them are actually based from studies, then you could say that your school actually have a good research culture. Now, you would realize that a good research culture is tantamount to having a good chances of research productivity. Okay, according to the study I have conducted, particularly the study of Bland et al. And Sulabo of the University of the Philippines, they identified 4 predictors of research productivity. And according to Bland et al., actually, this group has the most, shall I say, comprehensive framework on research productivity. It identified 3 predictors or factors of research productivity. One is individual characteristic. Second is institutional characteristic. And 3, leadership characteristic. But on my end, I added another characteristic adapted from the study of Sulabo from the University of the Philippines. It says that self-efficacy is also a predictor for research productivity. So that is why we were able to have 4 predictors of research productivity. Other study also could actually add other elements. As for our discussion, we limit it only to 4. So, going to our discussion, I will not elaborate so much. Under individual characteristics, Bland et al. Identify socialization, motivation, content knowledge, basic and advanced research skills, simultaneous projects, orientation, and autonomy and work habits. In other words, teachers and researchers who possess these individual characteristics are more likely to produce research. Motivation. Kapag, based on my interview, actually, in one of my participants, he said that despite of the challenges they encounter, which I actually later on will identify, what actually pushed them to produce research is their motivation. They are motivated to conduct research, which is an intrinsic motivation. Basic and advanced research skills. Others who were asked, bakit hindi kayo nakakagawa ng research? Kasi nga, hindi namin alam. No? We have a hard time doing statistics and data analysis. Orientation, because teachers or researchers were actually oriented. They would rather do these things than doing research. Content knowledge, they don't know the basic about research. Okay? Another, autonomy and commitment has academic freedom because they are not given that freedom to conduct a particular study. They rather not. No? But if researchers and teachers are given this responsibility and right, then more chances that they will conduct research and produce study. Work habits. It says as establish productive scholarly habits. If I am used to creating something for the school, for the world, for example, in my case, it's been my advocacy to promote research productivity not only in the region but even in the international arena. So that actually pushes me to conduct research. Another indicator of research productivity under Bland et al. Is institutional characteristic. What are these institutional characteristics? 1, a clear coordinating goals, research emphasis, culture, positive group climate, mentoring, communication with professional network, and resources. Kanina nabanggit ko earlier that culture is very important in order for you to produce research. Kapag ang isang institusyon ay may pagmamahal, pagpapahalaga sa research, more chances that they will produce research, as mentioned in this study. No? That is why a positive research culture is an indicator of research productivity. What else? Positive group climate. Kapag ang kasama mo ay mahilig din gumawa ng research, nadadala ka din gumawa ng research. No? So kapag ang mga kasama mo ay ayaw gumawa ng research, for example, in my experience, I've been promoting research productivity in my area for 3 years now. May mga gumawa na din, but still I hope more will continue to do research, no. What else? Communication with professional network. Sometimes the difficulty of conducting research because you have limited resources and network, but by conducting research you are actually connected to different researchers, not only in the Philippines but in other countries. Now, for those who are new members of the group we just created, no, the Teacher Education Academy, for example, the members there, like Attorney Jewel from Quezon Province, could attest to that research could indeed connect you to people around the world. What else? Here, which is actually very true, sufficient work time. When I was interviewing my participants from around the region, they said that they don't have enough time to conduct research because they are actually fully loaded. They have many tasks to do. No, mamaya lalabas yan dun sa ating interview. Size, experience, and expertise. No, they lack the expertise to do it. Rewards. In one of the literature I have read, in one institution outside the country, they are receiving from $700 to $3,000 as an incentive of conducting research. In other school, for example, in Pampanga, I heard a particular professor who was actually awarded 40,000. In other university, they were given 70,000 or up, depending on the impact factor of the research they have produced. Also, what else? The communication, decentralized organization, are assertive participative governance. Later on, that's connected to leadership, which I'm actually bringing you to the last from Bland. No, for Bland, leadership is also a research element in conducting research. And it says that if the leader is a research scholar, that means highly regarded as scholars, serve as sponsor, mentor, and peer model for research, more chances that the school can produce research. Research-oriented. One of the interviews that I conducted, it says, the reason why the school or the teacher was not able to produce because the leader doesn't support research, because the leader has other priorities. So if the school leader has a research orientation, more likely that the teachers, the researchers will produce research, which is true to one of my participants. He said that my principal would even try to find ways to find financing, funding, because aside from birth and the school educational fund, which is not enough sometimes because it is allocated to other concerns sometimes. What else? Participative leadership. That is why I would even I've been handling 20 schools in Pampanga, on particularly in secondary, in doing research productivity, and I would normally encourage principal to do collaboration with their teachers in conducting research. No, teachers can be deputized by the principal to conduct research on a particular topic, and they can do that. Okay, and lastly, okay, another research productivity indicator according to Sulabo and the other authors is self-efficacy. It says self-efficacy is an individual assessment of their own confidence associated with their ability to conduct research activities, from planning the research to publishing it. No? The trust that a task will be completed successfully according to Gardas, Primiana, and Ifende of 2017. Actually, the study of Sulabo et al. From UP actually emphasize also the importance of self-efficacy. Sa madaling salita, kapag gusto mo yung ginagawa mo, kahit wala masyadong incentive, kahit maraming naninira sa'yo, kahit hindi ka supportive ng leader mo, kapag gusto mong gumawa ng research, kapag determinado ka, kapag motivated ka, magagawa at magagawa mo yung research. So that's self-efficacy. Okay, so now, I'm nearing to the last part of my screen. I'm sharing you, this is not yet for publication, my initial paradigm on research productivity. So what I actually did was I do an online survey on the 4 indicators that I mentioned to you: individual, institutional, leadership, and self-efficacy. And then I do an interview with productive researchers, and I do a mixed method using joint display analysis. So And I was able to have, if you can, the following themes. No? The one outside the triangle are actually the themes. No? The one on top are actually the best practices that I get from my interview. And the one on the lower left are their challenges. And the one in the lower right are their coping mechanism. And using my joint display analysis, I was able to develop my unified themes. So I could say that the predictors for research productivity or the quality assurance framework later on, as I will develop this is an ongoing study for your information, is getting into graduate studies. In one of that interview, students would say that because of that lack of research skills, they were able to enroll in graduate school where they learn basic skills about research, and it is very helpful for them because it actually bridge the gap between their lack of knowledge on basic skills and on conducting research. Another is research-focused leadership and integral support. Anong sinasabi ko dito? One of the problems that they encounter is the lack of leadership support. So what I'm proposing here is leaders should not only be leaders. They're supposed to be research-focused leaders. So leaders are supposed to be focused on research. Okay? Next, lifelong education is a personal desire. Meaning that all teachers or researchers should actually have that desire to continue to educate themselves. And it's supposed to be a desire coming from within. Equitable reward mechanism. The mechanism of this kind of mechanism pertains to what kind of incentive is being provided to the researchers. Intrinsic passion for research, actually, later on you would realize in my modified paradigm that it's very important. It's actually becoming the first part, no? Just to show you, these are the best practices identified in that framework. I will not elaborate that because I already explained that to you because of the scarcity of time. So these are the best practices mentioned by the teachers. And these are the challenges: so scarcity of time, playing multiple roles, lack of technical expertise, lack of leadership support, lack of encouragement, slow feedback mechanism, and negative attitude among colleagues. So these are the identified challenges. And identified coping mechanism, what they do with that problem? So they try to set priorities, they try to focus, constant self-enhancement, fund sourcing, collaboration with others, consistent feedback mechanism, and building rapport. And that brings me to my enhanced framework. Again, this is not yet final. So, again, it seems that the most important predictor is the intrinsic passion of research. Kapag ang isang researcher ay gusto niya yung research, gusto niyang ginagawa niya, more chances that the person is able to conduct research. And then, ongoing graduate study. Okay? Because we are expected to conduct in our university, for example, we are expected to conduct a research per subject that we take. Then, our leaders supposed to be oriented to research. And if they are oriented to research, more chances that they will be supporting us integrally in all aspects, not only in research. And then lifelong education is a personal desire. Our desire to continue to learn. Okay? And research is that opportunity to learn. That would also help us produce research. And lastly, equitable reward mechanism. Not necessarily monetary, sometimes a simple recognition, or in other university, for example, they are given a promotion, they are deloaded, so on and so forth. So for me, these are the predictors of research productivity. And let me end by saying, in doing research and in all educational endeavors that we do, let me quote what St. Francis said, start by doing what's necessary. So doon muna tayo, ano ba talaga yung kailangan? Like in our modalities, in the needs, for example, in teaching now research and understanding culture, politics, and society, there are some issues as to the feedback mechanism. So let's try to settle that. Let's try to communicate what really seems to be the problem. Let's talk about that properly, okay? So that we can provide the proper answer so that we can still provide the quality and responsive education we're expected to do. And then, do what is possible. So, pag alam mo na kung ano yung priority mo, simulan mo sa mga kaya mo nang gawin. Okay? And that's actually the implementation of the plan. And lastly, you would realize that you are doing the impossible. Yung dati nakakala mo imposible, ay kaya naman palang gawin. So that's how we do research. Okay? So we try to identify what's necessary, what seems to be the problem, and then we try to respond to the problem, okay, by using this data and proper analysis of the data. And we have to remember that research is important, and we do research in order to solve a problem. We are doing research to answer a question. We are doing research to discover something new, to help in the field of education and to enhance and improve society. Okay? As a teacher, as a researcher. So, thank you very much for that, for your time. So once again, I am Leonilo Basas Capolso from Beyond Books Publication, your president. And I have provided you my number and my email address. If you have some clarification, you can just contact me, and in all research initiative and other collaboration in the future. So once again, thank you very much and good afternoon. Sir? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.